There's probably a decent amount of reasons. I get one of the reasons why 2017 even succeeded, I think, so well was my personal life was not too great at the time. So I kind of was just running, just no matter what. Like I would do the workout that was scheduled no matter what. Like I was just running out there. And so, it's kind of a fortunately, unfortunately that my life's been pretty good since then. So there's never really been a long period of time where I've needed running.
Hey there, podcast listener. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Eat Half, Walk Double podcast, coming to you from the Ascend Endurance Coaching Studios here in lovely Stratford, New Hampshire, US of A. I'm your host, Chris Dunn. If you follow the show, well, thank you and welcome back. So this show chronicles my 4 decades in endurance sports as an exercise physiologist, coach, race director, and athlete, told through the stories of the important, influential, and interesting people I've met along the way. While I catch up with friends, colleagues, rivals, clients, and the occasional family member, it's my hope you'll learn a little something about health, fitness, and the secrets to living well along the way. Kevin St. Laurent joins the show this week. By his own account, he's been running his entire life. His parents are runners, so naturally, he started running as a youth. In high school, he was an average to above average runner. In college, his running took a back seat. After college, he worked to focus again on his running, but struggled to maintain any kind of consistency. That was until he cracked the code and unlocked an entirely new level of performance previously unavailable to him. Remarkably, now in his 30s, he's setting PRs and winning races left and right. He shares how he's done it. Well, here he is, Kevin St. Laurent. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris.
It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since I've seen you in person, I think. So it's good to see you.
Yeah, and you and I do a pretty good job, I think, of staying connected. Thankfully, for things like social media, we have the opportunity to sort of stay engaged with each other, even if we don't actually get a chance to see each other in person all that often. In fact, you are almost always one of the first people to like anything that I do on Strava, and I gotta give you credit for that. I don't know how you do it. I don't know if you generally get alerts that someone has posted something new on Strava, but like literally, Kevin, I don't know that there's been a time when you haven't been the first person to like whatever in the world it is I'm doing on Strava.
Yeah, you're not the first person that has said that to me. I probably have a little bit of a Strava problem. I'm on it way too much, just kind of refreshing, seeing what people are up to. I don't use other social media a ton, so that kind of gets my social media fix for the day. So I think that's a good part of it. Yeah. But well, thank you for the another comment on being the fastest kudozer in the West.
Yeah, and I don't want you to feel self-conscious about it. I honestly said it because I admire that about you. You always make me feel good about what I'm doing because literally I post and then beep, I get a notification that somebody has liked what I'm doing, and 9 times out of 10 it is you. So look, let me open with a softball question for you.
Okay,
and you just answer yes or no, and we'll get into the why I'm asking this a little bit later. But my first question for you, simple yes or no, is did you run today?
I did, yes.
Now that was actually somewhat of a rhetorical question because I also follow you on Strava, and before I sat down to do the show, I did notice that you had posted a run today. So I knew the answer to that question, but for the audience, I wanted to make sure.
We're not waiting for this. You're not holding me hostage till midnight, so I don't get a run in after this or anything. So,
all right, more on that in just a minute. So, as part of my show prep, I was sort of perusing the internet, trying to figure out, what we were going to talk about, and more specifically how I was going to open the show. And I stumbled upon what I think, this is maybe more of a commentary on my sense of humor, but I stumbled upon a clip from a movie that for me is one of the most hilarious scenes ever. And this is it. So in the cult classic movie Old School with Will Ferrell, his character Frank gets a bit out of control at a party, right? Takes off all of his clothes and he starts streaking down a city street. Now, coincidentally, his wife and her friends are driving down the same street, right? When she sees him, she pulls over next to him and she asks him what the hell he's doing. And he replies, "We're streaking." And when she says, "Well, who's streaking?" He looks back behind him and he says, "There's more coming." and in pure comedic genius, he's the only one.
Yeah.
There's nobody else that's streaking with him. So Kevin, you're a streaker.
Yes, in a slightly different way.
Well, interestingly enough, there is some connection to that movie clip and actually what you're doing. Please to explain a little bit more to the audience about, because truthfully, running streaks or streaking while running, it may actually be the topic of two different types of podcasts. We're going to do one particular type of podcast. What does that mean that you're a streaker?
So what that means is that I go for a run every single day with no days off, no matter what, whether there's, terrible weather, injury, sickness, personal life things, no time there. I just pretty much always make time for it every single day, no matter what.
All right. So consecutive days of running is in this case what I mean by a streaker. Now we're going to get into more of the details of that in just a moment, because I think that's really fascinating. So the other part of my research involves stumbling upon. Well, not really stumbling upon. It was part of the research. Like everything, there's a website for this, right?
Yes.
And so the U.S. Running Streak Association keeps track of these statistics. I suspect that they're it's a user input platform, right? I mean, they're in other words, you have to sign up, or you have to become a member, or you have to input your information. Be that as it may, I just looked at it before the show, and I don't know how often you visit this website, but you're currently ranked. Your streak is currently ranked in the United States for active men as 523rd.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, as I was scrolling down through this list, and there's a lot of people on the list, Kevin. As I was scrolling down through the list, I actually found another friend. You might know him. He's actually a acidotic racing teammate of mine, Rick Fijalkowski. Rick Fijalkowski, also from New Hampshire. Rick is on that list. He's actually ranked 409th. He's just a little bit ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
So, Kevin, this is a little bit of a trap question, because I actually didn't give you this question as part of the show prep. I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot. Now I know the answer to this, but I'm curious if you know the answer to this. You probably do. Kevin, do you know who number one is on that list?
For active or all time?
Correct. No, active.
For active
men. Do you know?
I do not know who number one is for active.
I bet you recognize the name, though. I bet you've heard of the name. The guy's name is John Sutherland.
Okay.
Right?
I've definitely heard
Washington, Utah. A couple of years ago, Runner's World did an article on him, because in 2019, at that point, the 68-year-old, again from Washington, Utah, currently had held the record. In fact, he's number one on the list. His running streak, as of today, I believe the website's updated daily. It's 53 plus years.
Yeah.
And again, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, again, based on that 2019 article in Runner's World, that would now make him the world record holder for a running streak. I guess there was a Brit who at the time, the world record in 2019 was 52 years and change. Sutherland now is at 53 plus years of daily running, and he's 71 years old. What?
Wow.
What? you think you got a shot at chasing him down, Kevin?
What did you say? 52 years?
He's at 53. His
53?
running streak currently is 53.69 years. So 53 plus years.
That might be tough. So started.
Okay. So tell the listener what is your running streak currently at? I told him where you're ranked, 523rd, but what is your running streak at as of today?
So as of today, I'm at 3,087, I want to say.
Yeah.
Which is
8 years.
8 years was back in August of 2022. So we're close to 8.5.
Yeah.
Getting close to 8.5 years. Yeah.
8.5 years. So again, just to sort of put that in perspective, like you haven't missed a day of running since July 31st of 2014.
That's correct.
Right. 8.5 years.
Yeah.
And that places you 523rd on the U.S. active men's list. It just goes to show, I think, that this is a thing. Like it's a phenomenon. Now it may be, to the listener, it's somewhat of an unusual phenomenon, but truth is, there's a lot of people that are doing this. I mentioned Rick's name. Do you know of anybody else in the area, in New Hampshire or in the region? Do you know other streakers in this?
I do. I know probably about half a dozen or so that I know personally.
Okay, interesting. Their streaks, Kevin, slightly longer than yours, slightly shorter than yours.
So of all the people that I know personally that are run streaking, one person is longer than mine by a significant amount, and then the other people are shorter than mine. Got
it. Have you ever gotten any feedback from someone that they were inspired to start a running streak, even if they weren't able to maintain it for for 8 years, but started and maybe surprised themselves with how long they went?
Yeah. I mean, I've never asked them if I was their inspiration per se, I guess, but I mean that just the general idea of a running streak definitely came from me for the few people that I know. So I don't know how, what exact percentage I was the inspiration for. But one of my good running friends, Trevor Willoughby, he's got about 4.5 years now. And I think he used to work with your daughter, actually.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. My daughter, Madison. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
because my wife mentioned that when I told her who was scheduled to be on the show this week, she's like, I think Madison knows him, but she wasn't quite sure what the story was. In other words, my wife thought that my daughter knew you. She wasn't really quite sure of the story. Well, as she kind of reached out to my daughter to figure out what the story was. My daughter hasn't met you, or the connection was through Trevor.
Yep.
That's how she used to work with Trevor.
Yeah. Trevor was my boss.
Trevor was your boss.
He was my boss. Yeah. Like 6 or 7 years ago. And he was not a runner at all back then. He mentioned that he would take his dog out for like a mile or two a couple times a week. And I was like, oh, you should run more, just an offhanded comment. And then he started running, and then he got really good at running. And the funny thing is we're actually very similar, like just speed wise for races. So, it's like, oh, okay. Like, so we're,
maybe he's a little bit of a late bloomer like you are. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too, because I think that's a fascinating part of the story. For full disclosure, as an exercise physiologist and professional endurance coach, I'm not a fan of running streaks. But I do have tremendous respect for runners who have them. And more importantly, I have a real deep curiosity about what makes these athletes tick, including you, because I do think, Kevin, that there are valuable lessons to be learned for all of us who want to create more consistency in our physical activity patterns. Like I really feel like you've cracked the code, even though I would never recommend a running streak to any of my athletes or clients. I'm deeply interested in the psychology of that degree of consistency. Like I think some really important stuff embedded in there. And in fact, I think I read an article about you. You were interviewed for an article, and I actually think you might have said something to that effect. In other words, that this running streak, works for you, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Or I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Is that your general sentiment on the topic?
100%. That probably sounds word for word what I've said to a few people before.
I think I just read the article today again. I thought it was in that. I thought it was in that spirit. Well, Kevin, for the listener who doesn't know Kevin St. Laurent, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kevin St. Laurent. I'm 35 years old. I'm from Newmarket, New Hampshire, which is a small town on the seacoast of New Hampshire. And I currently reside in Stratham, New Hampshire, which is a couple towns over. And I run every day.
Awesome. Very succinct. I like it. So you mentioned that you're from New Hampshire, currently live
Correct.
in New Hampshire.
Yep.
So you're a New Hampshire based runner. I'm from New Hampshire. I live in New Hampshire. I run as well. I don't run roads anymore, really. I run, mostly trails. That said, you and I have a lot of mutual friends, and again, we're from the same general neck of the woods, and so we have a shared interest. We have shared friends. Our paths have crossed before.
Yeah.
This is really, for me, this is an important part of these podcasts is me having friends on who can remind me how I came to know them.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. I don't always remember. I don't always remember the stories in detail, and maybe you don't remember the story, but general big concepts. How did you and I come to know each other?
So I definitely can't remember exactly when we first met in person. But I feel like we've, as you said, have been on the same network of people and the same network of races for a significantly long time, whether it's working a race or putting on a race like you do, or myself working at a race, or just running one of your races. But I would have to guess the first time that we really interacted a lot was your Harmony Hill races back in the day. Which rumor that could come back someday, possibly, maybe.
I've also heard that rumor.
So I think that's the first time that we had a, decent amount of in-person time together. It was probably 2016, 2017 during that series.
Right. Yeah. So again, for the listener who maybe isn't familiar with the Harmony Hill. So a number of years ago, the event management company that I owned, we took over operation of this weekday summer cross country racing series in Northwood, New Hampshire, very near Co Brown Northwood Academy. That that used part of one of the state parks here in New Hampshire called Northwood Meadows State Park. Not exclusively, because we actually started on Harmony Hill Road, and we ran through a private farmland in order to get to the state park. So it was kind of a combination of private land and state land, and we held these weekly cross country races. Wednesday nights, I think, in the summer, maybe 6 or 7 weeks, something like that, 7 or 8 weeks. Very low key, very chill. But those, interestingly enough, I mean, I was kind of blown away by it. The races had a pretty loyal following. Like we would get 20, 30, 40 people show up, which blew me away. Like I did not expect that many people to make themselves available on a Wednesday evening in July or August to run a, whatever it was, 4K, 5K trail race. But man, people showed up, and you were one of them. That's right. See, I don't know why is it, Kevin, that when I think of you and I think of you as a runner, maybe it's because of all the pictures that I see. I think of you as a road runner, but
for sure.
Well, true, but you dabble in trail racing.
I do. The funny thing is, with Harmony Hill Race Series specifically, I did that to do something that's out of my comfort zone for running. So I try to do something like that at least once a year, because I am not a good trail runner, and I try to be better. And I think it's just, I mean, it helps so many things with training to run on trails. I mean, I'm not a doctor or expert on it, but just with all the different types of steps you have to take, like you build different muscles and you strengthen different muscles that you wouldn't from just running on straight up roads, which that's something, 100 times more than I do.
Yeah. Well, I think you totally nailed it. Well, but you ran cross country in high school.
I did. I was never good at it.
Okay. All right.
I was okay at it. I'll take some credit. I was okay.
Okay. All right. And again, we're going to circle back to that too, because I also think that's an interesting part of the story. All right. So, but at the very least, these weekday summer cross country races gave you a workout, a midweek workout, and because you treated them that way, you didn't just show up and just trot along and chat with friends. You ran them hard, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think for a lot of people, that's sort of how they view them. All right. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. And throughout the years, either myself or my wife, Karen, have done some loco races, in the southern part of the state, Newmarket area. And again, when I look at our list of mutual friends, we have a lot of mutual friends, right? Yeah. And almost all of them, I would say, are somehow related or connected to the running community, which is, as I'm sure you would agree, it's a fairly tight-knit community, right?
It is.
I mean, New Hampshire's not a very big state anyway. And then when you sort of narrow it down even further, sort of New Hampshire-based runners, that number gets a little bit smaller. I'm always, I don't know, do you have this experience? It always sort of shocks me when someone mentions a New Hampshire runner's name and I don't know who they are.
Oh yeah, it's weird. I'm like, how do I not know this person?
Right.
Moved here? Did they just graduate high school? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah. And do you ever have the experience like when you're like driving around in southern New Hampshire, in and around where you live, and you see somebody running on the road, and you're like convinced that you must know who they are, and you drive by slow and you look over at them, you're like, you don't know who that person is, and you're like, how do I not know who this person is? They're running in my backyard. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, probably weekly. I would say that probably happens.
You know the feeling, right? You know what I'm talking about.
No, that happens. That for sure.
You're like, I must know who this person is, and then you're like, I don't know who that person is.
No, like especially if they're going kind of quick. I'm like, I feel like I know my competition around here. Like I feel like if you're in my town or the next town over, and I see you running, and I don't know who you are, I'm like, who could you possibly be?
It's a very good point. Or along that similar vein, you get a notification on Strava that someone has taken your local, course record, and you don't recognize the name.
Yeah.
And right, that's got to drive you bananas.
A little bit. Yeah. And it's when that happens, it's like some college kid that's home, and I'm like, all right, it's January 3rd. I'll wait till like the 20th. So I know they're back at school. So if I take the segment back, they'll have to wait till May to come and take it back from me. So.
Oh, Strava. All right. Well, let's talk about your running streak. So as I said, I'm an exercise physiologist. So as an exercise physiologist, what I think is interesting about activity streaks is what it informs us about human behavior, specifically exercise related human behavior. Now, we all know the regular exercise is incredibly beneficial for physical and mental health, yet the behavior is difficult for many people to habituate. Some people, yourself included, as I mentioned before, have cracked the code, so to speak, and taken exercise habituation to an entirely different level. That's what I'd like to explore. Right? But for housekeeping purposes, let's start with a few basic definitions. First is generally, and then I'm going to ask you about how you define it. But for instance, if I go on the U.S. Running Streak Association's website, how do they define a running streak officially?
So they define it as a run done every day. The run distance has to be at least 1 mile. And it can be done in any way, treadmill, outside, on a track, in an airport, if that's needed, something, you're caught in a layover and you have to get your run in, running up and down between the gates or something. And I think that's really, it's a pretty succinct, short definition. They don't really go too crazy on it.
Okay.
There aren't more qualifications that are really needed for it. Mine's a little bit more, which I can get into at some point.
Yeah. And I'm gonna ask you that in just a moment, but just a quick follow-up question to that. So that seems pretty simple, right? I mean, we all, if someone said it, in your mind's eye, imagine somebody running like it. I mean, we all know what that looks like. And you mentioned it can be on the treadmill.
Yep.
You also mentioned it doesn't necessarily have to be in a traditional location. For instance, you mentioned, if you had to run around an airport, that would qualify. Well, let me ask you about this. It's not uncommon for runners, sometimes who are dealing with soft tissue issues or injuries, to move their running activity to the pool or to a lake. Call it aqua jogging, right? It's actually an industry, right? They've got those floaties that you strap around your waist to keep you buoyant. Kevin, aqua jogging, does that count?
I don't know. Are you asking if I think it counts, or if the actual definition on the Running Streak Association?
All right, good question. That's an excellent follow-up question. And because I haven't yet asked you what your definition is. Well, let's start with this. As far as the U.S. Running Streak Association goes, they don't mention aqua jogging.
They don't. Okay.
All right. And along that, and I'll ask you about your thought about that in just a moment. In a similar vein, as part of injury rehabilitation, there are these altered gravity treadmills. I'm sure you've seen them, right?
Yeah.
Where it looks like a treadmill, but it's sort of encased in this glass box, and you're sort of you're not suspended there because your feet are actually touching the ground, but then they somehow alter the air pressure inside this chamber, and you are slightly unweighted so that you're not impacting the treadmill with full body weight. Altered gravity. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I've always wanted to try one of those. I have not.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I'm an exercise physiologist. I have not tried one either. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Maybe it's a good thing because I haven't had the need to try one, although I'm curious about them. So along with, again, similar vein as aqua jogging, you're not aware that the U.S. Running Streak Association makes any dispensation for altered gravity running on the treadmill?
I'm not aware.
All right. So, and I don't mean to get in the weeds, but I mean, that it's not unusual for runners to either have to take it to the pool or who are involved in some sort of rehab of soft tissue injuries, having to take it on an altered gravity treadmill. All right. Let me ask you about how you define a running streak, because I'm pretty sure that your definition, well, like what qualifies as a run day for you, is a little bit different than the U.S. Running Streak Association. So for you, Kevin, what defines a qualifiable run?
Yeah, so I would keep the definition of at least 1 mile per day. It doesn't mention anything on their site, but mine is that there has to be at least one continuous mile in that. There are people that have a run streak where their mile is either interrupted. Maybe they live in a city and it's tough to get an entire mile at a time. If they're doing a shorter 2-mile run, like you might not have a continuous mile, but I've made sure mine have always had at least one continuous mile.
Yeah. And when you say people in the city might not have a continuous mile, are you saying because they have to stop for street lights?
Yeah, like just stopping, even if it's for 10 seconds for a street light, something like that.
Right. So for you then, Kevin,
yep.
Aqua jogging, altered gravity treadmill, or treadmill, what counts as a running activity, or what doesn't count as a running activity, maybe is a better way to put it.
Well, none of my streaks have been aqua jogging or on the Alter G. I actually hate just treadmill running in general. I have some treadmill runs during the streak. I would, if I had to guess, I'd say maybe 6. So
in 8 years.
Yeah. I haven't done one for at least 5 years. I know that.
Pretty good.
I just do not like treadmills. They are absolute last resort for me.
And just to clarify,
yeah,
the difference between running and walking. Right. So, because, you can, there are times in which you can actually be walking faster than you can run, right? For whatever reason,
sure.
If you really slow your running down and you really speed your walking up. So the difference between running and walking isn't necessarily pace based, right? It's more a matter of biomechanics. Technically speaking, you got to have at least 1 foot off the ground at or no more than 1 foot on the ground at any given time. That would be the difference or distinction between running and walking.
Correct.
Right? Because with walking, with is that right? Am I saying that right now that I'm saying it?
Walking, you have to have at least 1 foot on the ground at all times.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Right. With running, there's obviously that flight phase in which both feet during the flight phase are off the ground. All right. So the technical definition or the technical distinction between running and walking is with walking, there's at least 1 foot on the ground at all times. All right,
correct.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that explanation. All right. So I'm sure you would agree that consistency is really the key to all things, including athletic performance, right? I mean, it's as we mentioned before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it fair to say that you were an average to above average high school runner?
It's fair to say, yeah. I'd say I was average for cross country, and I was probably above average for track.
Okay.
Fair. So I was better at track.
Yeah. And is it also true that during your current running streak, you've set some lifetime performance personal bests?
Yeah, every distance that I still that I still compete in. My 800 meter record is still in high school, but I don't race the 800 meter anymore. So
fair. For the distance that you currently compete in, so all of your lifetime personal best in the events that you currently or still participate in, all of them have been during this 8+ year running streak.
That's correct.
All right. Now that's really interesting to me, right? So do you think, Kevin, that your running streak, in other words, your running consistency, has had anything to do with these personal bests?
I 100% think it does.
Yeah. All right. So elaborate on that. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah. So I'd say I didn't run in college. So after high school, well, I didn't run for a college team while in college. I ran while I was in college.
And you went to the University of New Hampshire.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So after high school, I really struggled with consistency and just motivation for running. I would, get in these phases, say in the fall, which I think is, and a lot of people think is the best running weather. I'd be really into running and I'd get in good shape start training consistently in August and then be in good shape in October, November. And then, the not so great weather would come and I'd maybe be running 1 or 2 or 3 days a week and maybe even take off a week or two. And then again, March would come around and we'd have some of those nice, March 58 degrees. It's like the first nice day, the sun's out till 7 o'clock. Like, okay, maybe I'll start running 5 days a week again and get in shape. And then it'd be 100 degrees in the summer and I'd be, okay, I'm going to take a couple days off and lose fitness again. And then fall would come around and, just go up and down like year after year. It would just happen over and over. So I experimented with run streaks. I want to say maybe 2010 was the first time I experimented with the run streak. And it was never with the intention of keeping a very long run streak going. It was, I don't remember what month it was. I think it was a summer month that I usually don't run a lot in, where I told myself, okay, August, if it was August, I'm not sure. I'm just going to run every single day this month. And yeah, the first time I did that, I think I ran every single day that month, a couple days into the next month. And I was noticeably fitter and I was motivated. And I went back to not run streaking, but I continued training well, where when I'm running well, I usually want to take 1 day off every 2 weeks. That was my standard way back before I ran every day. And yeah, that's the streak kind of would kickstart that. And I felt that my fitness, I would stay motivated and I would stay fit for say 6 months before I lost a little bit of interest, as opposed to, 3 months of being really motivated. So I did another run streak that was 30 days at some point in maybe 2012 and same thing. And then I think it was also 2012, possibly 2013, that I did a 101 day run streak, which I thought I would never beat again. It was actually through the winter. So, that's the toughest time of the year to have a run streak. And
right. Particularly if you live in New Hampshire, right? Just to make sure that we clarify that, right? It's not like you live in Phoenix, Arizona. You live in New Hampshire, right?
So that one kind of, it is funny that I thought I would be like, oh, that was 101 days. That's crazy. I'm never going to do that again. Like, never going to do it again. But yeah, I went, the key part from that run streak, I remember, was that, can I throw some 5K times out there to kind of give?
You do your thing.
I was in what I'd consider like okay shape for myself. And I remember running a race in the New Year's Day race in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I ran 18:55, 18:56, which, again, for me at the time, it was okay. It was like not good, not bad, just an average run. And the streak had just started right before then. And I just remember training pretty significantly hard, 30 days straight. And the same location in Lowell, Massachusetts has a race on Super Bowl Sunday. And I ran that race, same exact course, and I ran exactly a minute faster. Whether it was 18:56 or 18:55, I don't remember, but that next race, almost exactly a month later, say 35 days later, something like that, was 17:55, 17:56. And I was like, it's just 1 month. Like, now I didn't run a 16:55 a month later, but that would have been cool. But that's when I kind of realized, like, hey, maybe this run streak thing, like, I can do 100 days. I can keep training hard. It keeps me motivated with results like that. And so that 101-day streak was the last streak that I did before the current streak that I'm on right now.
Yeah. So during this current 8-year period, as you mentioned, as we talked about, you've set some lifetime personal bests at the distances that you currently compete in. For instance, those are things like 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon. Although I think I remember you saying at one point that you've, at least the last time I heard you talk about it, that you'd only done 2 marathons. Have you done more than that?
I've run in 4 marathons, but I DNF'd in 2 of them. So I still have 2 marathon completions.
Gotcha. All right. So that information is updated. I guess what I'm curious about is, so, you saw some pretty significant increase or improvement in performance during that initial run streak. You begin this 8-year run streak. Were most of the personal bests at these distances set early in this current run streak, or really have you seen a consistent improvement in performance, Kevin, over the last 8 years, or at some point have you begun to experience a plateau from a performance standpoint? Just help myself and the listener understand about the durability and the sustainability of these improvements in performance over the last 8 years of this current running streak.
Yeah. So going into the run streak, let's see, my 5K PR was a 17:38, and that was from, I believe, 2011. Started the run streak in 2014, in August 2014. In March 2015, after many, many attempts to beat that 5K PR, I ran a 17:37, which is a 1-second PR, which still a PR, still counts. You hope it's more. But so 2015 ran a 17:37, finally PR'd in the 5K, after almost a PR that lasted 4+ years. Later that summer, brought that time down to 17:14. So another big PR. Meanwhile, 2015, I believe I PR'd in the 10K as well. Also PR'd in the half marathon in 2015. And 2016 comes along. I kept bringing those PRs down. 2017 comes along. Now, most of my PRs are actually still from 2017. But that is by far the best training cycle I've ever had in my entire life. So if you continue on into 2018, 2019, 2020, I would kind of come close to those 2017 times, but I could never quite beat them. However, I since 2017 have not put in the amount of work that I put in 2017. So it's not like a stagnant increase in times because of, running out of talent or time. It's just, I haven't put in that effort to hit those 2017 times until, if I could add one more thing, the past few months, I've trained not as much as 2017, but a very significant, very, very good training block. And there's a good chance that I am going to get some PRs this winter, possibly early spring. I ran a race on Thanksgiving, 10K, and missed my PR by 9 seconds, which in a 10K, that's, very, very close to PRing. So,
and that was a PR that you set in 2017.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So to be 9 seconds away, like it's very, very, very close.
Yeah. Well, for 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah.
and the fact that you're 5 or 6 years older, right? I mean, you're still aging, although you're very much a young guy. Let me circle back quickly to 2017. So, you describe it as, you know, as a really successful year from a performance standpoint, but you also noted that your training was different from a quality standpoint and or a quantity standpoint. Clarify that, Kevin. Was 2017 from a training standpoint? We know about what happened from a performance standpoint, but 2017 from a training standpoint, was it quality or was it quantity? Because it was consistency was there. That wasn't the variable because you were running every day.
Yeah.
But what do you think was the big differentiator in 2017? Quality or quantity?
So it was quality and quantity, 100%.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Give me an example.
An example, we'll start with quantity. The kind of mileage I do can vary, but I'm typically a 50 to 60, maybe 65 mile per week guy for most of the year, unless I'm training for something specifically. I'll occasionally hit 70-mile weeks, low 70s. But it's, unless I'm training for something specifically, there's not a ton of those in a row or anything like that. So 2017, I was training for my second marathon. My debut marathon was 2016. I ran a 2:47, which I was very happy with.
What marathon was that, by the way, Kev?
That was the Loco Marathon, which is in Newmarket, New Hampshire, fitting for my first one.
Right.
So 2017, I wanted to beat my marathon PR, and I was already in pretty good shape. So I tried a rather ambitious training plan. It was going to be more miles than I'd ever done, multiple weeks in a row. It was going to be harder workouts than I'd ever done. It was going to be longer long runs, more long runs than I'd ever done. And just real quality. I get quality is a great word now that I'm not doing that training, but real tough, real like finish the run, want to go straight to bed type days over and over and over again in 2017. Before that marathon training block, I'd done one 80-mile week ever. And there was a point in that training block where I did 4 in a row. So, it just quality and quantity, and went out and PR'd that fall in everything from 5K up to marathon.
So, clearly there was cause and effect there, at least I suspect, at least in your mind. I mean, it just, for me as an outside observer, and quantity, it would make sense. And particularly if you remained healthy, it would make sense that you would experience some improvement in performance.
Yeah.
For you, how have you not been able, or why haven't you not been able to replicate that type of training since 2017? Is it lack of interest in doing that again? Is it because you haven't been training for marathons? Is it just the desire to put in that kind of work? I mean, you clearly you must have seen some cause and effect there. Why has it been difficult, Kevin, for you to replicate that 2017?
There's probably a decent amount of reasons. I get one of the reasons why 2017 even succeeded, I think, so well was my personal life was not too great at the time. So I kind of was just running, just no matter what. Like I would do the workout that was scheduled no matter what. Like I was just running out there. And so, it's kind of a fortunately, unfortunately, that my life's been pretty good since then. So there's never really been a long period of time where I've needed running to, help as much as it did back then. So
was running a little bit of an escape for you at that time?
Oh yeah, 2017, it absolutely was. It coincided with, the great training plan. That training plan was already planned. Just the fact that I think I stuck to it more than I potentially could have if everything was great in my life. So, yeah, since 2017, I've just never quite reached that level of training. I wouldn't say lack of interest. I've gotten close to that level. 2020, I got very close to that level of miles, that level of consistent high mileage quality runs. Unfortunately, in 2020, there really weren't races. I was stuck at home. There's plenty of things plenty of time to run. So I trained hard, and there were no races. So I would go and do time trials.
You might not really have known what your fitness level was like in 2020 just because of the pandemic. There, only in very rare cases were events still being held. Well, I think it's fascinating that here you were in high school, average cross country runner, above average outdoor track athlete, kind of dabbled in running through college, but it certainly wasn't a focus of yours. You sort of have this rekindling of a passion for running, right?
Yeah.
After college, and I mean, you're not just an average or above average runner anymore. I mean, there's a lot of times when you're standing on top of podiums, like you are one of the elite distance runners in this area. I mean, you may not see it that way, Kevin. You're probably you're a humble guy, but truth is you are a very successful runner now. And I mean, I have to believe, obviously there's always a myriad of factors that are involved in that kind of success. But your consistency, right, over the last 8 years for sure, has to be a variable. So the U.S. Running Streak Association, their website has a tagline. And the tagline is, through weather, injury, illness, and life events, we run every day.
Yeah.
So using that tagline, let me ask you some logical, predictable, and maybe cliche questions, but
I'm ready.
And these are questions I know you've been posed before, but it was a little while ago, and so perhaps things have changed. All right, most challenging weather. During
most challenging weather. I mean, it's tough to beat a blizzard when there's a driving ban, something like that. Like, oh, it's illegal to drive right now. I'll be like, but is it illegal to run? Like, so there's been a couple winters that there's been some very insane blizzard-like conditions.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say it's fair to say that for you, the most challenging weather to deal with in terms of maintaining the streak has been in the wintertime? You say that's
I
fair?
would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Whether it's a blizzard or I think as you mentioned earlier, an ice storm. Mm-hmm. I mean, as outdoor runners, so long as we can safely get to where we want to run, and perhaps for you sometimes that's just at the end of your driveway. So long as we can safely get to where we need to run, for the most part, roads get plowed and you wear traction devices, and it's not. I mean, running on a snow plowed street is not really that big of an issue. Ice is an issue. Ice is always an issue. Even with traction.
Even with the best nano spikes or yak tracks or whatever, like there's still a chance you're going to wipe out.
Yeah. Ice is no bueno. But to your, I guess to your earlier point, as we talked about the definition of what it means to maintain a streak, doesn't have to necessarily be fast. It just has to be at least one continuous mile.
Yep.
All right. So winter weather, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. I guess I should also probably ask, you must have a pretty robust outdoor running gear wardrobe. Fair?
It's kind of fair. I tend to wear a lot less even in the winter.
Okay.
I haven't mentioned this to you, but during the running streak, I've actually also run in shorts every day. So I have that part going.
Hold on. Wait, back up.
We can back up.
That's going to need some clarification. What did
Further
you just say? You've run every one of these runs the last 8 years in shorts?
That's correct. Yes.
And again, for the listener, you live in Stratham, New Hampshire, which is in the southern part of the state of New Hampshire, but southern in this case does not denote warm. New Hampshire is a cold, snowy state from December through, well, sometimes April, in which temperatures can sometimes not wind chill, but air temperatures can be in the negative numbers. You've still done every one of those outdoor runs in shorts.
Yes.
That I didn't know. That's an excellent little nugget. Is that just a matter of pride? Is that part of the streak, or you just tend to run warm?
It's probably all those factors. I definitely tend to run warm. The reason the shorts streak started, so the short streak is actually much longer than the actual run streak. Okay. The last time I ran in pants was 2005. So during high school, my senior year, we had indoor track, and our athletic director, if there was any bad weather, I'm talking like snow flurries, like didn't want us training outside. It was ridiculous. It was like, we're, teenagers, we can go run loops of the field if you're concerned about us getting hit by cars. But it's like, nope, can't run outside. It was like, okay. There's a lot of back and forth with that, we got a little more leeway. And there was a day that I guess he had seen us running outside in, maybe 20-degree weather. The team, we were all in shorts. And so we got in trouble for that. We were told that if it was below, I want to say 20 degrees, 25 degrees, like we had to wear pants to run. So we all reluctantly wore pants for a few times that winter. And then it was towards the end of indoor track. This is, my senior year. So it's towards the end of indoor track. And it was one of those days that it was 20 degrees. We were supposed to wear pants. And I was like, yeah, the season's over in like a week. Like, what's going to happen if I wear shorts today? Like, is the athletic director going to be like, your season's over? So, as a senior, I was a little cocky. So I was like, all right, I'm wearing shorts. And so I wore shorts that day. I don't think he ever noticed. So that part doesn't matter. But yeah, so I've now worn shorts for every run since whatever day that was. It could have been January. It was probably January 2006 because our season wraps up, late January, I believe, if I remember correctly. So,
well, that's indeed impressive. As someone himself who spends at least an hour outdoors every day, year round, I know that in the last 10 plus years, there have been any number of days in the wintertime in which it's really, outdoors is as uninhabitable in terms of weather as you can possibly imagine. That is indeed impressive and an important asterisk, I think, to the streak. Most significant injury that you've run through during this current 8-year plus running streak?
So I think there's a tie between two injuries. 2018, I really messed up my ankle very badly. Never went to the doctor because they would have told me to stop running and put a cast or a boot or something on my foot. So I did not go to the doctor, which my mother was not a fan of because, mothers are like that. But yeah, I've got some good pictures of that I can send you after of that ankle where
please do.
It was, it was black and blue, just the size of a grapefruit. Like it was, like I've rolled my ankle a few times. sometimes you hear like some noises that don't sound so great, but that one, when it, like, I heard like a snap, like it was bad. Still ran the day after. Luckily that was in May 2018. So there was more soft surfaces available, rail trail. So that made it a tiny bit easier to do. I don't know if that injury had happened in the winter and I had to run on tar. I don't know what would have happened then. Second injury wasn't a super painful injury, but I about 2 years ago was dealing with some really bad sciatic nerve stuff where it definitely hurt. But there was a point where my leg just wouldn't bend in the right way to actually run normally. Like it's hard to describe. I don't know if you've ever had sciatic issues, but
I haven't, but I know a lot of people who have.
Like I can't even describe how I'd try to make a running motion with the left side of my body, and like pain you can push through like kind of no matter what, but like the leg just wouldn't move in a normal way. So that was not fun. So that was a very difficult in a different way to deal with. And a lot of things with sciatic stuff is a lot of times is they don't really they might tell you to stop running, but like just general walking and stuff really isn't bad. So I was trying to just, go on walks and stuff like that, because you loosen and strengthen some of the muscles in that area tend to help. And it did help. So yeah, that was just a difficult injury for a different reason than pain, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it significantly altered your running mechanics. All right, worst illness that you have had to run through during this current running streak?
So there's a clear number one for this. It's not COVID, although running through COVID was pretty difficult. Sidebar on that, I did have COVID June 2022, and it was pretty tough. I was just doing like 3 or 4 mile runs in what is typically a very easy pace. My heart rate was just like as if I was running a 5K, basically, like racing a 5K. It was insane. I was like running along, well over 8 minutes a mile, flat road. Heart rate's like 168. I'm like, okay. But that's not the worst illness I've dealt with. I forget what summer it was. I want to say maybe 2018 or 2019. I got some pretty significant food poisoning. And there was also a heat wave at the exact same time. So it's just think about being, dehydrated, extremely dehydrated, because, things are coming out both ends, and trying to go for a run. Like you're so dehydrated already, and it's 92 degrees outside. So not to go into too much detail, but I was also kind of afraid to go too far from my house for
I understand
reasons. So I was doing these runs at 10 o'clock at night, because in case there was an accident of some kind, I didn't want anyone to see me. So yeah, that was by far the most difficult. Food poisoning doesn't last a super long time, but it was definitely at least 3 days. Like it was
well, and if you're not involved in a running streak, then you lay low for a couple days and it goes away and no big deal. But in the midst of a running streak, like you got to figure out a way to continue to get it done.
Yeah.
All right. So then the fourth thing, which is on their website, the fourth thing that we run through are life events. Most profound life event that you still ran through. And I'm really quite sure what that means, but maybe you know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it means like most, like either difficult or
like you got a buddy's wedding.
Day. Yeah,
you got a buddy's wedding, and then the next day, of course, you had a really good time at the wedding the night before.
Yeah.
Or you're traveling across country for graduation or those types of things.
Fortunately, I don't think I've really had to deal with anything too crazy. when I mentioned earlier, 2017 wasn't that great for my life, my personal life. It really wasn't like a chore to run. Like running was needed. So that rules out that whole time. I would say there's been some times where, yeah, that there have been flights and stuff like that have made a very difficult day. One recent example, I don't know if this would be the most profound moment, but I was working a race down in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and that pretty much called for a 4:30 a.m. wake up, somewhere around then, the usual. Go set up a course, go do registration, which is what I usually did back then, work the race. And then that one happened to be, we were flying out the same day. And I was there with a few other people one person had a flight earlier in the afternoon or mid-afternoon, and then our flights were at like 8 p.m. So we had to get to the airport super early, and our flight landed in Boston after midnight. So I was like, I have to get a run in, where the Airbnb checkout was well before we were done working the race. And I was like, I'm not going to run at the airport. And this is South Carolina in the summer. So like, I can do a lot of things after running without requiring a shower, but I feel like that for me, and, the courtesy of other people that would be on a plane with me, I probably need to maybe not shower, but get under a hose. So what we ended up doing was we finished working the race, and the race wasn't too far from the Airbnb we were at, even though it was 2 or 3 hours after checkout time. So we went back. There were no cleaners there or anything yet. Code still worked. So I went for a 3-mile run, and I guess snuck back into the Airbnb and took like a 30-second shower, because I was like petrified, like a cleaner was just going to walk in and then, charge us like $500 for staying there 3 hours late, which they totally could be right to do, and then like snuck out of there, and then like got to the airport, and then had to sit around an airport for 5 hours. But,
yeah, in all your sweat. No, I think that totally, I think that qualifies, as a life event, or an event within your life that you kind of had to work around.
Oh, one thing I want to add to that, actually, which I totally forgot about. So I hate running in the morning. Also, if I were to run that morning, it would have been at like 3:30 in the morning. And I actually considered doing that until I had mentioned it to someone that lived down there, that's what I was thinking of doing. And they were like, oh, don't run in the area you're staying in the morning, because the alligators come out and hang out on the sidewalks before dawn, and you're not going to see them. And I'm like, okay, my New Hampshire mind did not think that would be an issue at all. And I'm like, and they also have no streetlights there because it messes with the sea turtles or something. So there's no streetlights at all. So I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, I'm glad someone said something, or else I'd been running at 3:30 in the morning and maybe stepped on an alligator.
You would have totally tripped on an alligator and then taken out a whole mess of sea turtles at the same time.
Right.
That's actually a really good story too. So behavioral psychology really has taught us a few things about streaks. And in the center of it is this neurochemical transmitter known as dopamine, right? Also known as the reward chemical. So one of the things that we know is that as a streak increases, it becomes more valuable. And as it becomes more valuable, the dopamine reward increases. And as the dopamine reward increases, you put in more effort to maintain the streak. And as you put in more effort, you increase the likelihood of maintaining the streak, right? And what's interesting about this dopamine reward system is that in your case, it's likely a big reason you've been able to maintain your current running streak. But interestingly enough, this same reward system, it's also theorized to play a role in things like drug addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily making a connection between running streaks and drug addiction. Don't misunderstand that. I'm just saying that the neurochemical involvement is very similar. right? Those chemicals are very, very similar. A couple of questions for you, Kevin, as it relates to that.
Yeah.
Have you streaked before with any other non-running activity or behavior? Like, in other words, that people talk about dry Januaries where they stop drinking alcohol for a month, or maybe you didn't eat chocolate for 3 months, or I don't know, whatever. Silly non-running related things. Have you ever streaked with something other than running?
I mean, I feel like I have, never to the degree of a run streak, I would say. And also not in a day-to-day type thing. I used to have some pretty good like hiking streaks that I have failed on recently. So I'd always hike Mount Major as my first hike of the year every year, and then I would always hike Mount Washington via various ways, which Mount Washington's the tallest mountain in the Northeast, tallest mountain in Hampshire, obviously. And I would always hike Mount Washington at least once a year. And that streak I kept up for many years until I don't remember what year I stopped doing that. I've done like a dry January type thing too. But I don't really drink too much or very often. So that's not really like a thing that I need to do, I guess.
Yeah,
like I could, there's sometimes like I might go close to a month and be like, hey, I haven't had a beer in like 3 weeks. Like, oh, like I accidentally, did a dry month. So
got it. Yeah. Without consciously doing it. So in the beginning of this running streak, but before running became second nature, like before you absolutely habituated it, what was your daily routine like with respect to running? Like I'm talking about, pre-July 31st or pre-August 1st, 2014, the day that you started this current running streak, in which, I mean, you had mentioned that you had been running, but obviously not this consistently. I mean, before it became second nature, over the last 8 years. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about about your daily routine as it related to running. In other words, what did you do to assure that you were going to get a run in early on at the beginning of the streak?
So at the beginning of this current run streak, the initial plan was to just run every day of that August 2014. So I can't really remember if there were any difficult days or if I really had to, plan a routine to make it through that initial goal. I don't know how to say this without like sounding like I'm full of myself, but like to run 30 days in a row at that point was just like, oh, that's just run 30 days in a row. There wasn't like extra thought, extra planning, anything like that. It was just like, oh, just do it. If I had set out to be like, I'm going to run 100 days in a row starting August 1st, I probably would have had to put more thought into it. So I do remember once, August became September 2014, just with it being September, some of the best running weather out there, typically in our area, September, October. It just kept going. And I think probably once I hit maybe 60 days or maybe 70 days, I was like, I should try to beat my old record of 101. So at that point, that's probably when more thought went into the streak, just making sure there was a time in the day to run and just making sure that I got that day. And as I got closer to 101 days, it became more exciting. There's probably extra dopamine going through when I, hit 90, 91, 92. Sure. Yeah, so, sure. And whatever day 101 would have been, which would have, that's August, September. So some point in November 2014, past 101. I don't even remember, honestly, run streak day 102. I know I must have been excited. And then at that point, I don't know if I thought like, let me just try and finish off 2014, or if I know at some point I was like, I'm going to try to get 365, but I don't think it was that early on. I think at that point it was like any day over 101 is a new record. So
right. Yeah. Right.
keep as
Yeah.
long as
Every day beyond that,
and that's
you're
still
setting,
it's still a new record every day. So
yeah, you're setting a new
yeah.
high water mark. Well, I mean, now, you know, the objective is to keep the streak going.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, is there anything that you do specifically from a planning standpoint to make sure that you have, you know, your dedicated time, whatever that happens to be, you know, the amount of time and the timing of that time? Is there anything you do specifically to make sure that that time is not taken up by something else that you have to do? Like, how do you make sure that you have the time to do what you to get that run in today?
So, yeah, like I've said, I really prefer to run in the afternoon. So I'm almost always an afternoon runner. The exceptions are typically if someone wants to run with me and they can only run in the morning, or, you know, 90% of races are also in the morning. So planning for my run to be in the afternoon into the evening leaves, I guess, less room for unexpected circumstances, which is just something that I've dealt with and succeeded so far. So, you know, if you're typically a 6 a.m., 7 a.m. runner and, you know, you get that run done, if something unexpected comes up in your life at 2 p.m., it doesn't matter because you already ran. But say something unexpected comes up in my life at 2, 3 p.m., like, got to account for that. You know, I've been fortunate that that type of situation hasn't come so unexpectedly that there's been an issue. I definitely have dreams that scenario, at least once a month, there's a dream where I don't even know, like I'm dreaming that I fell asleep, or I'm dreaming that I'm like stuck on a train or a plane and I need to run. So that, you know, that is ingrained deeply in me, clearly. But as far as planning, you know, if I don't have anything crazy going on during the day, like I don't have kids, so I feel like that can affect a lot of people if they're trying to keep a run streak, because that throws a whole, you know, wild card of anything that could happen. So that's one thing that you take out of the equation. So the times that I would plan more accordingly would be, I don't know, like if I had work and then there was a work event after, you know, I'd be like, I'd run either lunch or in the morning, something like that. Cause, you know, I don't expect something crazy to happen at a work event, but, you know, what if someone gets too drunk and has to go to the hospital and you're the only person that didn't drink much and you bring them and be like, I need to leave the hospital now at 11 to go running. But, so yeah, I do try to plan for the unexpected, but fortunately for most of my days, there really isn't a chance of something crazy that's going to happen. So
do you always keep a pair of running shoes in your car?
Yes, I do. I have a pair of running shoes in my car. They're actually Mizuno's from like 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
That are just in there, just, you know, in case, because I feel like you can run in any clothes that you'd be wearing. Like it wouldn't be pleasant, but shoes. I mean, also like if I had to run a mile in flip flops to save the streak, I could do it, but I'd much rather have shoes, you know. So.
Oh, there's no doubt, right? Because you know, you get frisky and you do a mile in your dress shoes. Next thing you know, you develop some really nasty blisters. And man, blisters are something you can obviously continue to run through, but you're going to really delay the healing of blisters if you keep running on them. So have you ever turned down or otherwise sacrificed a social gathering in favor of the running streak?
I'm sure I have. I don't think that's come up too often. Well, that sounds like I have no social life. That's not true. But no,
Yeah,
it's more like
you might want to clarify that,
I
Kevin.
think a social invite or something like that may just affect how much I'm running
Okay.
that day. Like,
Okay.
say I go into a day with no other obligations and I'm like, I'm going to run 8 miles today. And someone is like, hey, after work, do you want to go blah, 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 or whatever? And I'm like, I haven't seen so-and-so in forever. Like, I should probably go with them. I'll just sneak in a 4-mile run instead of my planned 8-mile run and then go to that event or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know about blowing off like, oh no, I have to run. Like, unless I can't think of a scenario where there'd be like an unplanned big event that I need to go to that I wouldn't have, planned my run to accommodate that, I guess.
All right. Well, so I guess what I'm hearing is that a big part of it for you is planning,
Yeah.
and forward planning. So and along that line, I talk about something called priming with my athletes, and for us, what that means is in order to put them in a position that significantly increases the likelihood that they are going to execute on their plan tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about priming the subconscious mind the evening before. So, in other words, what I ask them to do is when their head hits the pillow, to as the last thing that they think about is not replaying the day's events,
Yeah.
but rather in a forward-looking mindset, thinking about how tomorrow is going to play out with regard to that thing that they need to do, right? To get in that run tomorrow. And we prime the subconscious by thinking about, by visualizing, where am I going to run? What am I going to, where am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? Why am I going to do it? We prime the subconscious so that the next day, right? What's the expression? The body achieves what the mind believes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've already primed the subconscious that tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon, you're going to go run on such and such a street in such and such a town because you're redlining that town.
Mm-hmm.
When tomorrow comes around and 4:30 comes around, then you almost automatically just sort of go into that activity mode. Kevin, do you use priming? Maybe you don't specifically use it that way, but do you think about, like, tonight before you fall asleep, do you think about where you're going to run and how you're going to run tomorrow?
I think so. I mean, at the start of pretty much every week, I kind of, whether or not I'm following a specific training plan, I do kind of plan out my week based on, what I have going on and based on weather, stuff like that. And then on a day-to-day basis, I definitely will think about the next day's run at night. It maybe not be the last thing I think about before I go to sleep. I'm pretty much always thinking about the next day's run. Like,
I bet.
Just analyzing different things, like, because you can start Monday with great ambitions for the week, and then you plan out what you think you're going to do for the week, and then you're a little sore, or you're just tired, and you're like, man, I planned 9 miles with the workout tomorrow. Like, am I really going to do that? Like, should I move that workout? Should I have it on Friday instead, Saturday instead, or should I cut back the workout a little bit, cut back the total miles? Like, should I just take an easy day because I really need one? Like, so I'm always thinking about, I don't know if it's always conscious that I'm thinking about the next day's run and planning, but it just always happens.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think planning is a really important and key variable. Look, one of the last things that I want to talk to you about is are the concepts of passion, obsession, and addiction. Because I'm sure that over the last 8 years or so, you've probably gotten some different types of feedback from folks about what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's very likely that feedback has been characterized in one of those three ways: passion, obsession, or addiction. Let's talk about that a little bit. Specifically, let's talk about are running streaks a manifestation of passion, obsession, or addiction? Let's lay the ground rules here in terms of the definition of these things, right? So, so passion would refer to an intense emotion that involves desire or enthusiasm for something. An obsession would be the domination of one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea, image, or desire to do something. And then lastly, in a very generalized way, although addiction has multiple definitions, there are general definitions, there are more clinical definitions, but from just a very general definition of addiction, addiction in this case would be the continued use of a mood-altering substance or behavior despite adverse consequences. Right? So passion, obsession, addiction. A couple of questions for you as it relates to these things. And specifically, as it relates to how other people view your streak and how you view your streak, right? I want to ask you about that. Let's start with this. How would you say your non-running friends view your current running streak? Would they say, if I took a poll, Kevin, would they more likely say it's a passion, it's an obsession, or it's an addiction? Non-running friends.
I'm trying to think how many non-running friends do I even have? You know, like
totally fair.
No, that's not true. I have non-running friends. I mean, if a non-running friend, I think would probably rate the running streak as obsession or addiction and not passion.
Yeah, totally. Totally fair. And why would you say that, Kevin? Because they generally not having an intimate understanding of why running is meaningful and purposeful in general, and specifically for you.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, if someone's not a runner, they probably know people that are runners, but they probably don't know anyone that does a run streak, or even knows what a run streak is. So when they first ask, like, what do you mean you have to run today? Like, you're like, well, I do this thing where I run every day, no matter what. And they're like, well, and then there's so many follow-up questions. And then they're like, just kind of like, and I'm like, we can end this conversation anytime. Like, we don't need to keep going. Like, I understand it's a little weird. It's very weird, but it's just what it is.
Yeah. I'm sure as you're describing it, it probably would seem to you like you've grown a third ear in the middle of your forehead, right? Just the way people look at you as you're trying to explain how normal this is to you. And with your complete understanding that this is that people who don't run certainly would see this as completely abnormal. All right. Your family. Now, I should say your immediate family, your parents anyway, are runners or have been runners, and they're obviously very connected to the running community. I mean, they built the running community in the southern part of the state of New Hampshire. Your family, do they view your running streak as a passion, obsession, or addiction?
I think they would be between passion and obsession. They'd be somewhere between there. I don't think they view it as an addiction. I think they're totally on board with the running streak 99% of the time. It's when I am running through an injury that even I'm questioning why I'm out there. That, I mentioned my mother earlier. She's the one that worries the most in that situation. My dad probably does too, but just doesn't vocalize it as much. But yeah, she's always like, be careful. Like, you don't want to be out there just to keep this streak going and then, ruin the rest of your life running, where if you ran through an injury that could possibly never heal because you kept running on it, like that stuff goes through my head too. It's like, okay, keep the streak going. You might permanently cripple yourself in regards to running, or end the streak and keep running the rest of your life. It's a tough you got to think about it sometimes.
Well, again, I think it comes back to this dopamine reward system, right? I mean, it's always a matter of reward and punishment, right? Do you love the feeling of the reward, and in other words, the dopamine, or do you fear the punishment? In other words, the pain of stopping the streak, right? It's always that balance between reward and punishment. Well, of course, your family knows you as well as anyone, and again, in your case, your family is very connected to the sport of running. So I would imagine that that they would understand you and this running streak even more deeply. All right, your running friends, Kevin, do they see your streak as a passion, an obsession, or an addiction?
They'd probably be on a similar level, I guess, as my family, I would say, between the passion and obsession level. I don't think any of my runner friends would think of it as an addiction. Just because especially people that follow me on Strava, you can just tell that the run streak, it has so-called easy days. Like if you had no knowledge of a run streak and someone just told you they ran every day and didn't see information behind it, they might not exactly know what that means. They'd be like, well, is he out there for 2 hours every day? Like is every day 10 miles? Like, what is this? But if people see like, oh, it's not really a day off, but if you throw in, a 25 to 30 minute run every once in a while, like that's almost like a day off. It's not as crazy. I try to justify it as if I didn't have this run streak, like how many days of the year would I do nothing, Like if even when I didn't have a run streak, if I wasn't running, I probably would go outside for a walk or, a hike or kayak or just swim around. I'm not a swimmer, but, just swim. So I feel like I never would be non-active for an entire day. I kind of try to explain that the day that you take is 24 hours. You're 30 or you're doing on your day of running, just replace that with my very easy run. So
yeah, well, I think
that's what.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's relative recovery and there's absolute recovery, right? I mean, absolute recovery is the zero, but relative recovery is an easy day, and I can certainly understand and appreciate it. I mean, I hadn't shared this with you, but I also have an activity streak. I don't have a running streak. But I'm this past December passed the 3-year mark of daily physical activity, daily exercise. Now it varies. That's strength work or walking my dogs or running or riding or paddling or whatever in the world it is, something every day. So I think that I think that absolute recovery. Back up. I think relative recovery can be a really useful mechanism to maintain an activity streak. In other words, there are times, and for certain athletes, in which an absolute day off is a necessity. But I feel like generally, if your activity volume stays relatively consistent, the need for absolute rest days goes down considerably.
Yeah.
It's really only when your activity volume is significantly ramping up, in which the need for an absolute recovery day begins to increase. And I'm sure you felt that as well, right? When you're generally speaking, when you're in the 50 to 55 mile a week volume range, like that's really sustainable for you. Like you can do that years and years at a time. But if you went from 50 miles a week to 90 miles in the next week, by the following week, you're going to start to feel some of that carried fatigue.
Yeah.
And not that necessarily would require you to take a day off, but that's when you're going to start to feel the change in volume. And when your body maybe starts to ask you for an easy day or a non-active day. All right, let me tie a bow on this line of questioning. So you talked about how your non-running friends would view this current running streak, how your family would view it, how your running friends would view it. Kevin, how do you view this running streak? Is it a passion? Is it an obsession? Or is it an addiction?
I think it's equal parts passion and obsession for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on the day, it will trend in either direction. But yeah, it's both of those. I never really see it as an addiction. Because if something happened and I couldn't run anymore, I'd be okay. Like,
yeah,
I would be sad. Obviously, it would be a loss for a while to end a running streak, but it wouldn't affect my life overall in a very negative way. It would just
and largely, I mean, I think obsession and addiction generally have negative connotations, right? Passion doesn't. When someone says they're passionate about something, people see that as a positive thing. But generally speaking, obsession could maybe go either way, but largely obsession is viewed as a negative thing. And at least in our culture, addiction has nothing but a negative connotation to it. And so long as you don't view your running streak as being destructive, now to your point, maybe there have been days in the last 8 years, and if you didn't have a running streak, like when you cracked your ankle, or when you had a sciatica, maybe you might have taken a day off if you weren't in the midst of a running streak. But by and large, the last 8+ years, your running has not been destructive. I mean, if anything, as we've talked about, your consistent running has elevated your performance. You probably feel healthiher physically, mentally, being more active than less active, I would venture to guess, right? And so it would seem reasonable to me in all of those ways that you would not view your running streak as an addiction. I don't view it as an addiction. I view it as a passion, but certainly can understand that maybe it does at times cross over into the obsession, which I think is reasonable. Well, Kevin, let's finish with this. There's a part of the show I like to call 3 random questions. Okay. It's 3 questions that I have not provided to you in advance. Correct?
Yeah, sounds. Okay. I'm ready for them.
This is one of my favorite parts of the show.
Do I have to guess what the J stands for in Chris J. Dunn? Because I don't know.
No, these 3 questions are not about me. Okay. But it's fun. It's fun for me to watch people think on their toes. So, all right. So here we go. 3 random questions for Kevin St. Laurent. Kevin, first random question. Aside from running, do you have any other hobbies?
I mean, I think I'd be a pretty boring person if I only ran and did nothing else. But yeah, I mean, besides, hiking, which I don't do as much as I used to, but I still love hiking. But I just really love music. I've never learned to play anything, which people always think is funny because the only thing I talk about anywhere near as much as running is music. So yeah, I love to find out who people's favorite musicians are. I love to, just get new music from people that I've never heard. I love to introduce music to people that they've never heard. And I pretty much just always have music going in some form or another. So
yeah. All right. Yeah. So follow-up question, not part of the random 3. Last concert that you went to?
Man, since the start of COVID, I've gone to so few concerts versus what I used to. What was the last show I saw? It might have been the Wallflowers last year. You familiar with the Wallflowers? Pretty big in the
Yes.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
I've
Yeah.
seen them 5 or 6 times. Really good. I think that was the last show. I could totally be forgetting.
Yeah.
Actually, well, that's the last major band. I'm sorry. I've been to, there's a farm stand relatively close to me that puts on much smaller, like family friendly shows. So I've been to a
Very
bunch
cool.
of their shows.
Very
I
cool.
went to 2 or 3 this summer. Um, it's great. It's like a small family farm. It's like 10 to 15 bucks to go. They do food and stuff like that, and just like local bands. They'll either be a cover band, like there's been Grateful Dead cover
Yeah.
bands, or there'll be like a local bluegrass band, stuff like that. So just a really good time.
Very cool. Sorry, another follow-up question. Do you listen to music when you run?
I actually never listen to music when I run,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
sounds crazy, right?
Yeah. No,
Um,
not crazy at all. No, I am not a fan of listening to music while I exercise. Well, when I run or ride, but I thought with your interest in it. Okay, and then last question as it relates to follow-up question as it relates to that. How do you consume your music? Do you listen to streaming music services like Pandora or Spotify or Amazon Music? How do you consume music?
so a bunch of different ways. I have a pretty good record collection that I like to listen to. But I also do join the 21st century and stream music as well.
Okay.
So I kind of do both, but yeah, there's nothing like just putting on a record and just like actually listening to it and getting up to flip it over and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that makes me sound old, but just kind of cool. But that's not the best way to do it 24/7. Sometimes you just want to like be like, hey, play this play this playlist. And it's just a bunch of different artists, and like, okay, that works for this setting. Like if I have people over, I'm not going to be putting on a record and flipping it over. Maybe I am, but
Yeah.
not always.
Yeah, and genre of music. I mean, maybe you listen, maybe you're a fan of multiple genres, but go-to genre of music, favorite genre of music.
Yeah, I mean, I do try to listen to pretty much every genre. I just try not to limit myself, because I've surprised myself many times with, someone in some genre that I don't usually listen to. And I'm like, wow, I love this singer. Like, they're amazing. But as far as most often, I again like a lot of the older music. I definitely have a passion or obsession for Bob Dylan and anything he's ever been associated with, his various bands that he's worked with and such in his solo career, and just everything him. So yeah, that's by far number one.
So Dylan wrote "Blowin' in the Wind."
He did.
Right. So a number of years ago, I actually learned how to play a riff from that song on the harmonica. So that's a
Nice.
interesting factoid. Okay, random question number 2, Kevin.
All right.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Let's see. I probably eat way too much candy. So it's not good. So I try to not buy candy very often, because I'll just eat it all. So we already talked about addiction. I don't think I'm addicted to candy, but yeah, I eat too much candy.
Yeah. So are you the guy that buys like 5 times more candy at Halloween than you're going to hand out just so that you have candy?
I mean, I don't get trick-or-treaters here, so I don't need to buy candy, which is unfortunate, but I definitely buy discounted candy on November 1st. So, but yeah, no, it's sad. It's sad. No trick-or-treaters at my house. So I don't know.
Do you, so your love of candy, do you feel like you can outrun your candy obsession? Meaning, in other words, that like you feel like you run enough that you could have a full-size Snicker bar every now and again, and it's not gonna.
Oh yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I don't really count calories or really even weigh myself. So I just try to eat, relatively healthy 90% of the time. And if I want a sweet treat or if I want something that's not healthy, I'll just let myself have it in relative moderation. So,
okay. All right. So we're taking a road trip. This is not part of the random question. This is a follow-up question number 2. Okay. So we're taking a road trip and, I don't know, we've been in the car for a really long time. We're both starved, but it's outside of mealtime. And we're going to, we need to get gas. You're going to pump gas. I say, Kevin, I'm going to go inside. You want me to grab you something? What candy bar am I grabbing for you to hold you over until we get to mealtime? What's your go-to gas station candy bar?
It probably changes occasionally, but I do love Almond Joys. It's not Almond Joys if you're only asking candy bars and not candy, or if you're asking candy and not just candy bars. I would also say Skittles. I love Skittles. So
yeah, okay, fair. Yes, okay, good. I should have made that question broader. Candy in general. What am I grabbing?
Yeah. I'd probably ask for a pack of Skittles. I love them, but then also like as a car snack, I feel like Skittles are great because you can share them. You're not always tempted to eat the whole package at once. Whereas a candy bar, like, I don't know, maybe some other people do, but if I'm opening a candy bar, I'm not like holding it back down and saving some for later. Like, I'm just not doing that.
It's a very good point. All right. Final question.
All right.
I have for you. So you're hosting a group run with your friends. Now you can invite 3 VIPs.
Okay.
Now they can be someone who you know or someone who you've never met. They can be real or fictional, meaning like a movie or cartoon character.
Yep.
And they can be from the present, or they can be from any time in the future or the past. Like including your future self invited back to the group run. All right. So I've got very loose criteria here as it relates to VIPs. Kevin, who are your 3 VIPs that you're inviting to your group run?
Let's see. Let's start off with
and I should also say too that you can assume that everyone is a runner, right? So it doesn't have to be people that you know are runners. Even if you don't know that they're runners, assume everybody is a runner. Okay.
So this could be more for a conversation than.
Now you're getting it. That's
interesting.
Right.
Okay. Well, I feel that one of these people is definitely going to be a runner. I'm going to go with Steve Prefontaine. Just because, I don't know. I mean, he's every high school runner's idol. And when people get really into running when they're younger, it's always Steve Prefontaine. I mean, they made multiple movies about him. His quotes are, on the walls of so many college dorm rooms of runners. And it's just like the way that he lived his life, just running all out no matter what, and just doing things no one had really done before. And just everything about that. I think it would just be fascinating to just talk to him about that. Just like, I don't think anyone really runs like him before or since. Like every professional runner has run not all out in a race, like at some point in their career. And Prefontaine, just every single race he ever ran, he ran as if it was the last race of his life and as if he was going to die the next day. So I would love to just talk to him about anything. I'd probably be too starstruck, but let's assume that I'm not, and that, if he was still alive, that'd help too. But yeah, so that's number 1. Let's see. My future self would be interesting. So let's put my future self in there. Myself from.
How old are you?
I'm trying to think, like, because I don't see the run streak ending anytime soon, but I could see, like, if you were to tell me in 10 years this run streak wasn't going on anymore, I'd be like, okay, that's possible. So how about, okay, actually, no, this might break the rules, but
no rules.
Okay, no rules. So assuming the run streak ends before I die, I would like to go for a run with the version of me on the first day after the run streak ends.
I like it.
Because I want to see if it ended on a positive note. Like, who knows? Like, I could hit 10,000 days and I'm like, you know what? Like, this streak's kind of getting a little much, like ended on this ridiculous number. Or like, did something happen like that was more important than the run streak? And am I okay with that? So I think that would be interesting.
Okay.
Be interesting to see what I look like in whatever,
Yes, also true.
Like, oh, you're still trying to make the beard work? What are you doing? Let's see. Okay.
You got one more VIP.
Okay. I'm going to break the rules again slightly. Is that okay?
Okay.
A slight
Go right ahead.
I would want to run with my parents when they were a lot younger, both of them. If I have to pick one, I'll pick one. But I think,
you know what? In this case, I'll let you invite a fourth VIP.
Okay. So like my parents, when they were in their 20s, I would love to run with them and just see, because I've run with my parents, obviously. And I remember them running from when I was a little kid, but besides pictures and stuff, I have no idea. And, race results, I have no idea what their runs were like when they were in their 20s, when they first met. Like, they got married. My dad was 26. My mom was 22. So, I would just love to go for a run with them then. They were runners then. So I think that would be wild, like to just see what their mentality about running was and just let what they planned for life. Maybe I'm running with them and they don't know that I'm their son, and I can, just ask some questions like, oh, what's going on in your life? Like, like, oh, we just got married. Like, we're heading to South Korea to work soon, because that's what they did right after they got married, because they're crazy. So yeah, I think that would be awesome. That's a very unique question. I really like that.
Thanks. I love the way that you answered it. Do you last question and follow up to that? Do you think your dad would take charge of what the route would be?
I think he would try to, and then my mom would be like, "That road doesn't make sense. We should go on this road." And then he'd be like, "You're right." And then we would go that way. So he'd be like, "No, this is definitely an 8-mile loop." And she'd be like, "Michael, this is like a 4-mile loop. What are you talking about?" And he'd be like, and then they'd eventually,
they'd eventually do what your mother suggested.
Yes, they would. Because my dad would probably be wrong. So, she would correct him. But with some good fortune, they'll have the opportunity to listen to this. And Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me. That was awesome. That was a lot of fun.
Think about this for a moment. The last day he didn't go for a run, Barack Obama was just starting his second term in office. While rightfully so, much of our conversation focused on his running streak. But I really think the take-home message is that consistency, above all else, is the key to unlocking new levels of performance. It doesn't mean you need to run every day. It simply means you need to remain active year-round. Once again, you've been listening to the Eat Half, Walk Double podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please circle back to the homepage and click the follow or subscribe buttons to stay up to date with all the new content. And of course, if you really enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with your friends. I'll be posting some supporting media on my Twitter account at Coach Chris J. Dunn and the show's Facebook page at Eat Half, Walk Double. So make sure to check that out. And lastly, remember, the secret to living well and longer is to eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure. Until next time.